Alright, it's time for an update and forecast on Tropical Storm Hilary. Notice I'm saying Tropical Storm Hilary instead of Hurricane Hilary because it's no longer a hurricane. The winds dropped down to 70 miles per hour, so it is now a tropical storm. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to see some big impacts, and actually that was expected this entire time. We'll see why it decreased in intensity in just a moment. It has to do with the cooler water as you get closer to California. But the main risk throughout the day today is heavy rain leading to flash flooding. So I think the first thing we should do is just check out the radar right here to see where we have some rainfall at the moment. We actually had some already starting yesterday. There was moisture out ahead of the storm. Now we're starting to see some more of the heavy rainfall showing up. And you can see that where it's more yellow to even orangish in color. That's over, I believe, the San Gabriel Mountains right there. And that's what happens with this system is a lot of this moisture is being lifted up in the mountains, and that's why some of our mountains have the highest rainfall amounts, around 6 to 10 inches. And then that's also where you see the gustiest winds because it can be funneled through the different canyons. So this is where it is, or it was as of 8 a.m. on Sunday. That's where it was a tropical storm, and then it's moving forward. It's going to be directly over San Diego. It looks like maybe 4 p.m. this afternoon, and then it turns into a tropical depression eventually, and you can see the path that it's taking through California. You can also see that there's no longer hurricane warnings along the coast. The blue line represents tropical storm warnings, and then you also notice that even though the eye of the hurricane gets the most coverage, which is like right around the center of the low, where you see that orange shading is anywhere where you have the tropical storm force winds. So what that means is even though the center of the storm might be taking this path right here, the area that will feel the gusty winds is much larger than that. Now you might be wondering, oh, so Hurricane Hilary turned into a tropical storm. Is the storm falling apart? Was it overhyped? Was it overblown? But this was expected to happen the entire time. If you've been following this over the last few days, it was a category 4 when it was way down in the Gulf where we had the warmest water, or the off of Baja California. That's where we had the warmest water, and then it's been decreasing ever since then, and it's going to continue to decrease. Pretty much every single model says that. You could throw out those two. I don't know what they're thinking is going to happen. But this is the reason why. So even though it's an El Nino year, and we have above average temperatures, you can see that on the right chart right there, and I can actually get a little pointer out so you can see a little bit better. So during El Nino, warm water rushes back to the eastern Pacific, and that's part of the reason that Tropical Storm Hilary is as strong as it is because warm water is like fuel for a hurricane, and we have warmer water than average, especially off of Baja California. Now, this chart on the left is even more important for understanding why it went from a hurricane to a tropical storm and why it was expected to do that all along. Down here, you have very warm water. It might be 80, 85 degrees, and that's where our storm strengthened to a category 4. Then once it hit that yellow boundary, that's where your water starts being less than 80 degrees. That's kind of the magic threshold for hurricanes. Less than that, the storm's going to decrease in intensity. And then since then, as it's been traveling up Baja California, it has been slowly decreasing in intensity as it moves up towards Southern California. So that's why it went from a hurricane to a tropical storm, because of the cooler water closer to California. Now, with that being said, I don't want to downplay any of the danger with this, because we do still have the tropical storm warning throughout Southern California, where you see the red color. I don't know what you call that, maybe a goldish color is where we have the high wind warning. You notice that's a lot more widespread, which goes along with this image here where you can see how widespread the tropical storm force winds are around that low. And then you also have the flood watch, which extends from Southern California almost all the way up to South Lake Tahoe. And that's, I think, the main thing that I'm worried about. Out of these 3 warnings we have going on, the main one I'm worried about is the flash flooding due to the rainfall. But still, just looking at some of the winds, that's the low right there. You notice it's strongest on the eastern side of the hurricane, and you can actually, it makes a lot of sense when you think about the direction this hurricane is moving. So it's moving north-northwest at about 25 miles per hour, and then you have this counterclockwise flow around the hurricane. So let's say you have maybe 50 mile per hour winds over here. As the storm's moving forward, you can almost add on that 25 miles per hour it's moving to the north on the eastern side. So the circulation and the direction of the storm kind of combine to lead to gustier conditions on the eastern and northeastern sides of hurricanes, tropical storms, really any kind of cyclone. So just looking into the timing, this is now 2 p.m. this afternoon. That's when the low looks to be directly over San Diego. And then once it starts to move more into Southern California, that's where you start to see more of these extreme wind gusts move in and the tropical storm force winds. And then those eventually move up into the Sierra as the storm takes that path up through the Sierra. So let's just look at where we are expecting some tropical storm force winds. The purple is where it's basically a guarantee that you're going to see tropical storm force winds. So that's greater than 39 miles per hour sustained, less than 73 miles per hour sustained, which means you can have some gusts that are much stronger. And anybody who knows this area knows that there's lots of mountains down here, San Bernardino, San Gabriel, and then you get up into the Sierra. And almost just like what we have happen with the Santa Anas, where it funnels your winds, and that usually leads to very bad wildfires. That's what's going to happen in some of these mountainous areas with the winds from Tropical Storm Hilary. It's going to funnel the winds, and then that's where even though tropical storm force may think, 40 mile per hour sustained, that's not that bad. When that gets funneled through our mountain ranges, that's where you could see some gusts, maybe up to 50, 60 miles per hour. So I don't want to downplay the winds, but again, I do think the larger impacts will be felt due to the rainfall. So that's why I've been focusing on that. And then look at the yellow color right there. That's where you still have a 30 to 40% chance of tropical storm force winds all the way up into the Sierra, and you even have a bit of that gold showing up, which is maybe 50% chance. So this storm is definitely still going to stay strong as it moves through California, although it will start to decrease in intensity even more the longer it spends over land because it's cut off from its energy source, which is the water. So this, I think, is the most important graphic that I show throughout this video. Greatest flash flood risk over the next 3 days. Basically all of Southern California, stretching into the Southern Sierra, has that red color, which is moderate, so at least a 40% chance of flash flooding. And then the purple color, that's where you have at least a 70% chance. And what's going to happen is your highest rainfall totals are going to be up in the mountains, but we have very steep mountains around here, and that rainfall has to go somewhere, so that's where it's going to rush down to the lower elevations. So if you're at a lower elevation and you see an alert on your phone saying, seek shelter immediately, but it's only drizzling out, that could just be because you're in the lower elevation below some mountains. They picked up the heavy rain, and then now that flash flooding is coming into your area, even though it might not be raining as hard where you are. So mountains pick up the heaviest rainfall, maybe even 6 to 10 inches. Deserts, maybe around 4 to 7. And then along the coast, maybe 1 to 4 inches. And then you can't see the marginal at least 5% risk of flash flooding. That actually stretches all the way up into Northern California. And that could be the one silver lining that we have with Tropical Storm Hilary, is we have a large amount of wildfires burning in Northern California right now. And if we pick up some light to moderate rainfall, it could be very beneficial, not only to kind of help put out some of the fires that we have in NorCal if we get enough rain, but it'll also help us throughout the rest of fire season because it'll bring some moisture back into our fuels. So speaking of moisture, let's see what the rain forecast looks like. That is pretty close to right now. Heavy rain stretching from Los Angeles through just to the east of Bakersfield and then almost all the way up into the Sierra. And then as we get later into this afternoon, keep an eye on Southern California. That's where you're going to see the low move directly over San Diego. That's where we have very widespread heavy rainfall, even along the coast in Southern California. And then this low is almost going to take a straight path up towards the Sierra, and then that's going to spread the heavy rainfall up there. as we get into 11 p.m. tonight. And then as we continue, that's at about 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. You noticed most of it is done for Southern California. That's at 11 a.m. And it looks like most of the rainfall is cleared up and moved into Northern California to hopefully put out some of the wildfires that we have up there. And then maybe some showers going into the Central Coast. But when you look at the total precipitation, so I'm just going to click through the entire event here, and let's see what kind of rainfall totals we're looking at. Bay Area and Central Coast aren't really seeing big impacts from this. It's probably going to feel tropical out there today because we're seeing some of the moisture move in, some of the high clouds. But it's really San Diego up to the Sierra, our deserts, our mountains. That's where, as I mentioned, we could see 4 to 7 inches in the deserts and then maybe even 6 to 10 inches up in the mountains. And I also just want to point out that that was the GFS that we were just looking at. And all the models are a little bit different. So that's where you really just have to stay updated with your local resources and pay attention to any alerts that might be popping up or warnings that are popping up, because as Tropical Storm Hilary interacts with land, it's going to change, and this is one of those things that we just have to follow closely throughout the day today. And right there you can just see some of the changes between the American model and the European model. European model barely has any rainfall for the Central Coast, more of a direct line from San Diego up into the Sierra. So I just want to show the warnings one more time. We have the tropical storm warning in Southern California. The storm should be moving in directly over San Diego at about maybe 2 to 4 p.m. this afternoon. That's where we'll feel some of the tropical storm force winds. And then we're also going to see some flash flooding. There's at least a 70% chance stretching from Southern California up into the Southern Sierra. Most of the rain falling in the mountains. And along with that, so tropical storm warning in red, high wind warning in gold, and then the flood watch stretching almost all the way up to Lake Tahoe. So lots to follow throughout the day today. I'll most likely be doing live streams as this system moves over San Diego, so stay tuned for more information. I hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.